Here are this week's Pool Together Community Podcast highlights.
So give me the pitch for 3DNS. I would love to know, like, who are you actually selling to? What are you selling? Because I know there's ENS, there's Unstoppable Domains. I mean, these aren't competitors, but this is just like all the ecosystem, right?
Yeah. So there's really sort of like two big camps in domains right now. You have ICANN domains, and then you have non-ICANN domains. And if you want a domain name to resolve or be usable in a browser, it has to be ICANN compliant. We really wanted to enable Web 2 tech to work on Web 3. And so we work with existing web domain endings, so .com, .xyz, etc. And then we enable you to bring those domains onto the blockchain. The two major benefits there are you get improved domain security, and then you get improved liquidity of these markets. So pretty much we have an off-chain registrar. It's sort of a database of who owns what domain. And say I move georgebeal.com from my traditional registrar into 3DNS. Once it lands in our off-chain registrar, that then sends a trigger to our on-chain registrar, which works very similar to ENS, which will then send you an NFT version of that domain. At that point, the off-chain registrar will become a read-only of the on-chain registrar. When you look at some solutions like ETH.limo, the real big flaw with those products is that you don't actually have control over the domain. And so where that gets important, first is sort of security. It is pretty easy to hack domains. You can call up GoDaddy and convince them that you are the founder of Curve and you got locked out of your domain. Can you please redirect our domain to, this website? And that exact example with Curve happened in 2022. And so with our system, the only way that you can update the name records for a domain is by controlling the NFT and having it in your wallet, going and updating the name records similar you would with an ENS domain. And then the next benefits are that generally it's pretty difficult to buy and sell domains. And so we also believe that by bringing these domains on-chain, you can manage them as on-chain assets, have them integrate with DeFi, do all kinds of cool stuff with it from there.
So there's this conversation that's ongoing about on-chain versus off-chain. What is necessary? What needs to be on-chain? And everything else being off-chain, and it can still be decentralized, but not everything has to be on the blockchain.
So the way our system works is they can only be changed on-chain, and then our off-chain system will simply just read the data from the on-chain registrar. With domain names, having the name records on-chain is a really big value add because that's how you can actually, guarantee the security of your domain, but then even more so, that's like the actual tangible, valuable piece of the domain name. And so by being able to have the NFT be the sole governing asset for those name records, that NFT now is actually very valuable.
Great. Yeah. There's a use case for like individuals to offer subdomains to people, but then also for communities for sure, which is really cool. So that's awesome. So who's your customer?
I think firstly, every crypto project should put their domain on our platform. There's just way too many tangible security risks in crypto right now. We have seen a number of hacks. Curve and EtherDelta both had DNS exploits of pretty significant size. It makes a lot of sense to just eliminate the security risk that is centralized DNS. From there, we're also working with some of the decentralized hosting providers like Fleek and Marlin and such to also offer sort of fully decentralized front ends. So, you can have the DAO pay for hosting and own the domain. And so hopefully at that point, it also starts to eliminate some of the legal liability for DeFi apps. So I think, that's sort of customer base number one. I think number two is definitely in sort of this like secondary market for domains. Like OpenAI just bought AI.com for like 15 mil. And so, right now, a lot of the secondary market is much like a lot of these like really high ticket domains. Generally we think that if we can start to build better technology to enable a much better secondary experience, we can start to eliminate a lot of fees, build a better product, and just build a better secondary market for domain names.
All right. So anything else, like any cool alpha or things that we need to know about 3DNS?
Yeah. So if you notice, our website is 3dns.box. So .box is one of the newest domain endings that's being issued right now. And so it will be the first TLD, which is top level domain, pretty much just like domain ending. It'll be the first TLD that is fully on chain, but also fully ICANN compliant. So, make sure to keep an eye on that. You can follow them on Twitter at Box Domains.
Nice. I signed up for the wait list, and thanks for spending time with the Pull Together community, George.
Yeah. Don't trust centralized registrars. We've been over this before.
Thanks for listening. You can download the full episode of this week's Pull Together Community Podcast on your favorite podcast app.